Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions and not heard anywhere else. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. And Tyson, today we got a fun episode today because I woke up early. Penn State had their national signing day along with everybody else in the country
Yeah, but who
today.
cares about them?
And it was overshadowed, I think, a bit by the transfer portal. So what we're going to do is we're all going to talk about transfer portal on this one. We're going to talk about National Signing Day. So we're going to give you a hodgepodge and give you some high-level thoughts, some high-level overview thoughts on where we think about college football recruiting, portal, all that good stuff. So, Tyson, I know you love this stuff, so I'm excited to get into this with you.
Yeah, we figured we'd save everybody from having to listen to us break down the Frisco Bowl or whatever the hell we were going to talk about otherwise. Next week and going forward will be kind of more bowl specific or other kind of the college football playoff stuff like that. But we're at this weird sweet spot where there's games going on every day and it's not like all concentrated on Saturday. So we already missed half the ones this week.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get into the college football transfer portal, if you're watching on YouTube, smash the like button, please. Send us a comment if you disagree with anything we got going on as well. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. And if you're listening in podcast form, rate, review, anything that you can do. It just helps us out, and we do appreciate it. So without further ado, let's get into it, man. Transfer portal, it's just dominating everything now in college football. Like we were talking before we got on here, it's not about National Signing Day. Like this used to be appointment viewing. Like you never knew if the 5-star kid, the 4-star kid was getting flipped at last second. He's committed to you for 2 years, and all of a sudden somebody comes in and signs him away from you. Like that, this is appointment viewing. You needed to know if you're getting the kid. Now it's in the back burner because, well, we'll talk about it, that some of the top players on the market are moving, like Will Howard, Dylan Gabriel, Cam Ward. Like people are excited about those type of players instead of the incoming freshmen. So just let's get in that thought. I know you wanted to ask me a couple questions about the longevity of this thing and where it goes. But what do you think about how transfer portal is dominating things now?
Well, it's like a endemic almost within college football at this point. Like, we were talking over text the other day, and I meant what I said when I said that I get some shit from people because I like watching the FCS and I like watching Division III or whatever it is, but the product is the football, and at the highest level of college football right now, the product is the university, the player, and the brand, and then the football. Right? We're at fourth, and it just kind of feels like we're not that far away from some sort. It is Suedo free agency. That's what it is. But Brad, my number one thing, because all I hear from when people are talking about this is it's so immediate, like the reaction, because it's still fairly new and it's the Wild West right now, and there's no real rules governing what you can do. Is this is like the worst thing that can happen? My question is, what are we going to be saying in 5 years? Like, is college football going to be in a better spot because of the transfer portal in 5 years than it might have otherwise been in, or where it was 5 years ago?
I think all you have to do to answer that question is look at the Heisman Trophy ceremony. Who was there? Jaden Daniels, the winner. Where did he transfer from? Arizona State into LSU. How about Michael Penix? A lot of people thought he should be a winner here. Where did he come from? Indiana to Washington. How about Bo Nix? He was basically ran out of the SEC at Auburn. He went to Oregon and turned them, well, they're in the college football or they had a good season, didn't make the college football playoff because they lost to the other transfer twice and Michael Penix. So I think when we look at that from the broad overview, I think that's good for kids. Like if you need a second chance, if you want to follow somebody, if it was like in Bo Nix's case, it was stale at Auburn, just wasn't quite working. Okay, I'll get a change of scenery, things like that. I think where it can run into trouble, and this is where you're going to need the governing body, you're actually going to need the NCAA to do something instead of slapping people on the wrist for nonsense, is where things turn into the Wild West, like you mentioned, where, okay, sweet, I just played 1 year at Alabama, I committed to him for 4 years, but this team over here is offering me $7 million. So now I'm going to go play there now. Oh, wait. Oh, I'm going to put my name in the portal because, yes, I just got $7 million, but well, now I can go get other money here and I want to play more over there. That's where I think it can get into trouble. Remember when there was waivers for transfer? You had to sit out a year, and then people got mad about that because it was unfair. Well, if it's a bad situation. Well, now they're just like basically waiving everything, and these kids are taking advantage of it. And so I think there needs to be strict rules in place. The new president of the NCAA needs to come in and like make strict rules for this. Or Tyson, there needs to be separate rules for college football itself than the others in the Division I athletic sports.
Yeah, I think that's probably closer to like a true fix than just rules, because rules are always going to get circumvented. We're talking about some of the slimiest organizations at the top of these, like not all. I'm not saying colleges or institutions or universities themselves inherently. It's like once you get to the top of these athletic programs, how many scandals do we have to hear about from basically everybody from 1 through 40 has something going on within their system there. So that like the rules are going to be found a way around, Brad. But I think part of this, at least right now, is the COVID year. Like we're still in it, right? Like some of these kids are 24, 25 years old, and it's tough, to be an 18-year-old and really look into the future and be able to say, I'm going to play. It's tough. You've played your whole life, and now you get to a team where there's a 24-year-old man that's starting over you, and you were told you were going to start because that kid wasn't supposed to be back here. And now you just sat the whole year, you're stewing about that. You're 18, you're emotional. I'm hopping in the portal because you're not thinking next year I'm going to come back and be able to win a job, and I want to be here. You have a year of experience of not playing. I don't have a problem with kids transferring when it is truly a bad situation, or like if it's like just to use an example, like if it's a Sony Michel, Nick Chubb situation where both the guys are really, really talented and should be going very early in the NFL draft. Like I don't have a problem if one of those guys wants to go play. You can't discern that. Like when they enter their name into the portal, you want them to fill out an application, reason for leaving. I was lied to, but they're all going to say the same thing. Like it's all going to be a bad situation. So you can't really govern that. Dude, they're going to kill the middle of college football. That's legitimately what is going to happen in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years if they don't fix this, because nobody's going to want to drop down on purpose. I'm not going from P5 to Group 5. If I was good enough to play in the Power 5 or Power 4 now, coming out of high school, well, I just picked the wrong school. I'm still good enough to play Power 4. Whereas before, you kind of learn quick. Like I can't cut it here, and like that's the mindset that's never going to turn off for these kids, and occasionally kind of need it because it makes you a better player, it makes you a better human being. It's a very entitled thing.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting the way it's being viewed, and I think where it will get better too, Tyson, is in the past it was okay. I'm putting my name in the portal, and once you do that, you never return. Right? The coaches view it as a backstab, they view it as disloyal, things like that. Oh, really? You're not committed here? Good riddance. Where now it's more seen as free agency in a way. Where it's okay. I'm going to put my name out there. I'm just going to test. See what's going on. But maybe I'll return. And I think the coaches are open to it as well. Like it's a re-recruitment of some players. I think some schools handle that better than others. I think it's up to the coaching staff and the people in charge to have a culture in place where kids want to stay. Even if the football thing's not going well, whether it's academics, whether it's social, whatever the case may be, whatever, that's where I think we look at college football as a business, and it is. But I think what we lose sight of, and I think people in the media, like on ESPN, on Fox, what they forget, and I think this is the disconnect between players and coaches at that level and what the media who covers them thinks. These are 18 to 22-year-old kids.
Yeah.
They're going to college. They want to play football. They want to be with their friends. They want to grow as men. And we just view them immediately because it's turned in that way for some families and some kids where, no, this is an extension of the NFL. This is the minor leagues, and everything has to be serious. Everything has to be this right now. Where in reality, Tyson, the majority, 98%, we could say, they'll never sniff the NFL. They want to just do one last ride with their boys. They want to get a good education. They want to set themselves up for their future jobs.
Well, that's one of the issues that I had when we talked about the NIL like a year ago. Giving these kids all this money in high school is just like is commoditizing a word or what, you're turning them into commodities basically from the time they're 15. And then, they get on campus and that's not the guy that you remember recruiting, but it's because he has $15 million in the bank. He's supposed to listen to you. That doesn't make any sense. I think that's something that needs to change. But on the whole, I'm still a little skeptical that the transfer portal is going to end up being a very good thing for college football, but we're here now and it's not going back. And I think that's something that everybody that is super duper upset about it and won't quit talking about it in this negative light is failing to realize is like, we're not going back to just grad transfers. We're not going back to the waivers. If they're going to do anything, it's going to result in some loss of eligibility would be my guess. And that's going to make people even more upset. But like, there is no right answer, and the NCAA rocked the boat to a point where now they have to fix it. And I don't think they're going to.
Yeah, it's not like the NCAA has done anything to give you confidence in doing that. So that's for sure. But like you said, man, it's here. Like the transfer portal's here, whether you like it or not. This is the monster that the NCAA opened, and it's the Pandora's box they opened and the monster they created. So let's talk about some of those top players that have been on the move here, because there are some names in this portal now. I mean, so nasty. Let's go through this. I mean, Cam Ward, this is interesting. At Washington State, it didn't quite work out to the level that they thought. On 3, they have a prediction that he's going to go to Miami. You know, that's a guy there. How about Dante Moore, 5-star incoming, leaves UCLA after a year, commits to Oregon. That's on the heels of Dylan Gabriel leaving Oklahoma and going to Oregon. How about Will Howard? You know, he's going to Washington, Kansas State. Let's just replace Michael Penix, another transfer there. Riley Leonard leaving Duke, going to Notre Dame. They go back-to-back transfer portal grad transfer guys. You just run through this list here. I mean, there's big name after big name, guys who haven't found a home yet. Anybody that sticks out to you, anybody that you're looking at and you're like, ooh, this is interesting. This is what I want to see.
Well, I think all of them. But, Brian, I think the reason when I was kind of running through that list just now in my head, it dawned on me everybody in college football is just a quarterback away, right? Like that's a common term in the NFL. Oh, they're just a quarterback away. That's never true. It's never been true. It's probably never going to be true in the NFL. In the NCAA, like the gap between Florida State and Miami very well may be a Heisman candidate at quarterback, right? And that's a 4-game swing or whatever in the regular season here. It's going to be quarterbacks are going to be the main beneficiary of this always. I really am confused at how Oregon was able to pull that off. And maybe it's Phil Knight is raining down money and it's as simple as that. But that's very interesting to me, because if transfer portal recruiting turns more into like a future endeavor, right? Like Dante Moore is going to sit behind Dylan Gabriel and then come in and play. And if that's the way the transfer portal is going to work out, then college football, I think, becomes insanely interesting.
He could have sat for another year at UCLA, so I think something there was amiss. I don't know. Whatever the case may be. Let's be honest here too, Tyson. I'm looking at this. It's very interesting. It's very rare when these kids enter the portal that they go from what they were touted as in high school to an either greater recruit. It's normally they go from 5-star to 4-star, because there's a reason you're in the portal. I think a lot of people forget that. Like, there's a reason why kids are transferring. Now, the ones from A&M, there's a reason why they're transferring. We know, like Walter Nolan, 5-star, you know, he's on the move, probably going to go to Ole Miss. Evan Stewart, you know, both sophomores, 5-stars. There's a reason why they're out of here. Coach got fired. That's a normal thing for the transfer portal. It's not a situation where like, oh, he was sitting down and they were pissed. It was like, coach got fired, built a relationship, they're out. Like, when you look at this here, you know, Dante Moore, just to use him as another example, 5-star, got bumped down to a 4-star in the transfer portal. Travis Etienne, 4-star to 4-star. So I guess that's not necessarily proving my point. But, oh, here you go. Marvin Jones Jr., edge rusher from Georgia, bumped down to a 4-star going to Florida State. Like, the reality is, if you're on the move, it's probably because you didn't live up to the expectations that were placed on you when you were in high school. Yeah,
but at the same time, a lot of these coaches, I think, you know, are very glad to get that value decrease, let's say, as far as and let's not kid ourselves, the resources are being committed to the transfer portal. They're prioritizing the transfer portal over National Signing Day because these guys already have been in a program. Whether it's yours or not is a different story. Maybe like Dabo Swinney doesn't want to bring in a bunch of non-Clemson culture guys and kind of lose what he's built over the last 15 years there. But at the same time, man, like, you're getting a grown-up in the room and somebody that can immediately help you. And the names coming to my head right now don't fit the bill, right? Like Jared Verse wasn't necessarily, that's not a real transfer portal. That's an FCS to an FBS program. But just look at the impact he had on that team. Look at what Michael Penix was able to do. Lines are going to start being built through the transfer portal, because are you going to trust an 18-year-old that, who knows how long that kid's been 6'5", 340 pounds? You might not know how to move yet, but I can go get a 21-year-old kid that's been this big his whole life. He already knows how to play, and he's been handling college competition. And I think that's going to be the most underrated part of this when we examine these names right now in the portal, because they're not flashy, and it's really hard to tell whether an offensive lineman from Tulane could be a all Big 12 member.
Tyson, I want to throw this out here because these are some of the teams that are attacking the transfer portal. And I just formed this thought in my head, and I want to get your thoughts on this. So Colorado is ranked number 1 by 24/7 Sports. They got 16 recruits that are 4 and 3 stars. Ole Miss, 10 commits. They're second. So Colorado, Deion Sanders in his second season. Ole Miss, we know Lane Kiffin loves to use the transfer portal. Louisville, Jeff Brom, going to be in the second season, 16 commits. TCU, South Carolina next. Sonny Dykes and Beamer, they don't necessarily kind of jump into it that way, but they want to add commits, things like that. They think they can get better. Brom Dave Dorn at NC State, not necessarily, but here we go. Arizona State, 14 commits. Kenny Dillingham, that's going to be a second-year coach. Houston, they're going to have a new coach. Mississippi State, they're 11th, 10 commits. They're going to have a new coach. Syracuse, new coach, 6 commits. Arkansas, 8 commits, new coach. Texas A&M, 6 commits, new coach. I'm reading that out because I want to know, do you think that really, like, when we talk about the transfer portal and the overall, like, we're getting these guys in, like, oh, we're just completely reshaping this roster, is that going to be more of a tool used by coaches in their first, second, third year compared to a guy like James Franklin or a Ryan Day or a Jim Harbaugh who has their established base? Maybe we plug and play a couple guys that we need. Oh, we're losing a tackle. Maybe we can go get someone in the portal. Is that how you see it playing out?
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Because like we'll say those guys are trying to build a culture and everything, but what they're trying to do, Brad, is win. And the common denominator between every team that you just named there that's been in the top 10 of the transfer portal recruiting are guys that inherited jobs that, didn't recruit at the level as everybody else in their conference. And this is your first or second year in this program, and you're looking around like, oh, I don't have the same dudes that these guys have. This is going to be harder than I thought. Whereas a Harbaugh or a Ryan Day or a Nick Saban or Kirby Smart or whoever, when you're bringing in the number 1 through 5 recruiting class in the year every year, there's not a ton of spots to fill, right? And so those guys are benefiting from that same value decrease we just talked about, where they now have access to getting a guy that would have never considered NC State coming out of high school. Like I was SEC or bust. And then I didn't get to play, and NC State has something cool. And that guy was my defensive coordinator, and he recruited me hard. And now he jumped to a new school. I'm going to follow him. And that's kind of how you can build these things. But is that sustainable is an entirely different question. Because if you're not in the buildings, if you're not in these high schools making relationships with these coaches, at a certain point, like, it's going to get harder and harder to walk into those buildings and recruit. You got to win.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things too. I was listening to Ole Miss, and Lane Kiffin's great in the portal, right? Like, he's funny, he's good, he can offer you something, but it's impacted their actual high school recruiting, and I think we've seen that through the rankings. And that's what's tough. Like, you can establish a relationship. Like, all these guys are going on official visits. They're all getting in contact with coaches. They're all going to these same camps. Like, they kind of know the parties. That's why a lot more kids, I think, are entering the portal, because they're like, wait. I had 3 schools who love me. I'm not playing here. I'm going to go see if they want me again. So I think that's the kind of something else that's coming out of this portal as well. But I think the teams that are really using it, I mean, that's my synopsis. Probably everybody else is like, yeah, dude, no shit. Like, the teams that are new coach. Let's see if we can get our old players. Let's go get new players, something like that. So that's what I've seen. Because, like, I'm looking at these lists, and it's every year. Like, Georgia's not really heavy in it. Bama's not heavy in it. Ohio State and Michigan, like the teams who, Texas, the teams who are dominating college football, well, throw Texas out of there, but like who have been dominating for the past few years, they're not necessarily using that to just overhaul their roster and like, oh no, we can go get all these players that are available now.
Well, there's not a single big brand either in those in the top 10 of those transfer portal recruiting rankings. Like, Colorado is trying to build one. We're still in year 1 of this thing, right? And Ole Miss is always going to be the bridesmaid in the SEC when it comes to recruiting these. Like, they're going to beat out Mississippi State, and then the 5 other best players in Mississippi are going to Alabama, Georgia, LSU, or wherever, right? So You got to build a brand, and that it ultimately comes down to winning, and that's going to be the thing. If these guys if Deion Sanders comes out next year and wins 10 games, then he's going to get into every high school he wants, and that's going to be a different situation in 3 years from now than where they were. But if you just keep whiffing, like Notre Dame brings in Sam Hartman. Sam Hartman has a great start to the year. Notre Dame has to now bring in Riley Leonard. Riley Leonard's probably going to have a good year, the Sam Hartman-esque year. We're going to talk ourselves into this team as a national championship contender, and then we're going to go, oh, yeah, I remember that guy from Duke, or I remember that guy from Wake Forest. And then they're not going to be able to recruit these high school quarterbacks, Brad. Like, it's going to get to a point where you've made your bed. You got to lie in it.
So Tyson, let's turn the page now because like the transfer portal overshadowed it, but today was a huge day, man, because it was National Signing Day for high school kids. Like all the commits, or the majority, they're signing on to these schools, so no longer can get kind of backstabbed or get pried away from other teams. And so you'll see the final recruiting rankings coming out, and it's interesting when you look at it throughout the year as different commits are coming in different grades. It's funny how at the end of the year, they all kind of match up to the same way. And so I just want to read through this because it's pretty much a consensus I think top 10 really. Now I'm looking at, basically a top 10, 11 here. So Alabama consensus number 1 class from On3 and 24/7. Alabama, the number 2 overall class. Then 3, 4, you can flip Ohio State and Miami. Ohio State's number 3 for On3. It's Miami who's number 3 for 24/7. Texas at 5, Oregon 6, Auburn at 7, Oklahoma 8-ish, Florida State 9-ish, Notre Dame 10-ish. You kind of go through that. LSU, 10, 11-ish. It's not a surprise, that these are the teams that have dominated recruiting. I just wanted to pick your brain, get your thoughts on what you've seen so far in these rankings, what you saw when the signing day was hitting, and you saw these kind of final rankings come through.
It was just a complete lack of surprise. Miami finishing 3 or 4, depending on which website you're on, I think is fantastic, and it was one of the best defensive line recruiting classes. And if you watch Mario Cristobal, he wants to play football, right? And so we're going to go get some freak defensive linemen. I think they did their best to build a mini wall around Florida and get the guys that were, gettable for them, because this is a class that is much needed. Florida State looks back, and that's not a situation you want to be in if you're Miami. So I think that was encouraging, right? And Nebraska flipping Dylan Raiola, that was encouraging. These are good things, but there's not a non-blue blood or blue blood light inside the top 19, right? Like it's South Carolina at 20, where you're like, good for them. Everybody else, you're like, yeah, you probably should be here.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I mean, the Raiola thing for Nebraska, we're talking about this before we jumped on. It was like, oh, wow, okay, Matt Rule, after complaining about, we don't have the money to get these 5-star guys. His dad's on the staff, and all of a sudden Raiola changes his mind. Doesn't want to go to Georgia, wants to go to Nebraska. I think an exciting thing for me here, Tyson, we knew this was going to happen. We said it when he was hired. Hugh Freeze at Auburn. All of a sudden, they're the number 7 recruiting class. 2 5-stars, 11 4-stars, 20 recruits. It's a big-time class. The dude can recruit. Auburn is a place where you have to get big-time talent. This guy's going to flip this thing around at a heartbeat. It's going to be coming soon, like Chiswick level type of deal that we were running with. So Auburn's on the rise here. How about Oklahoma? 8, like they should be in that area. But I think for Venables, we're not sure if he wanted to go out and really hit the recruiting trail hard, besides maybe some of his defensive guys. I think them slotting it at number 8, that's a good sign for him. Tyson, I got to do it to you, man. I'm just me personally from an angle. I watched Penn State today. I'm super excited about this class. Like this is a little bit underrated here at 15, 12, whatever you rank them at, wherever you're looking. I think 14 maybe for 24/7. They did a good job, I thought, of spraying what they needed. Like they got secondary help. Like we got some guys graduating in the next few years as well. Tight end, that's of need. We've got another quarterback. You can never have too many of those. I thought that was exciting for me. I thought they did a good job, and I think they put together the best 3-year stretch under James Franklin in terms of overall recruiting that I've seen since he's been there.
So there's two sides to me. One is saying like it's really tough to get, like, for me as a fan, to get overly excited about National Signing Day, just because it's like you never know who's going to pan out, right? And you could miss, you could sign 4 or 5-stars and they end up being the worst ones out of that 4 and 5-star group. The other part, and the real part that's kind of grounded in reality, check the NFL. Go find the recruiting rankings of everybody in the league right now, and it's going to be littered with 5 and 4s. And there's like it's in the NFL when somebody's a 3-star recruit, it's news. They talk about it on the broadcast, and so like you're sitting at home like me, and you're like, who cares? Just keep that in the back of your mind. These things are really important to building good programs. Brad, what the hell happened to the Big 12 today?
I have no idea. I was just about to ask you the same thing.
What the was Texas Tech was the highest Big 12 class? Is that right? They were like 20 something.
Yeah, because Texas is out. Texas at the SEC. I'm
Yeah,
looking at
Texas and
Texas Tech
Oklahoma
right
are SEC.
now. They're 22 and on 3.
Yeah, for the whole conference. That's not where this. That's not how this thing should have shaken out. They're in the primetime recruiting area. You want to know how bad of a year Baylor had? They are closer to 100 than they are to the top 25 ranking that they were clinging to 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'll roll off of that, dude. Like the disappointing thing, Tyson. I'm looking through this. Are you kidding me? USC's 18th.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
They didn't sign a single 5-star, man. That's what Lincoln Riley was built to do. Build up this franchise, build up this organization, build up this program. 20 recruits, 10 4-stars, 10 3-stars, no 5-stars. That's not
Well,
a good
didn't
start there.
didn't the what's his saying? Is the kid's last name? I'm blanking
Yeah,
on his first
Julian
name.
Saying.
Yeah, and he went to Alabama, right? And
Yeah.
he's from, I think, like Carlsbad, California. I read those are the guys that, hey, Lincoln. And I know that you didn't really have to deal with this in Oklahoma, but those guys can't get out. They can't lead your state, man. These guys weren't walking around Oklahoma. Like you got to build a wall. They're going to augment that whole thing out of the portal. But again, like this is a guy trying to build a brand, and his brand is going to become transfer guys that just it's not going to get it done. At 18, I think that's an objective failure this year, and who knows? Maybe they hit on 18 guys, and we're just being silly. That go down the road in LA, Brad, and I think that was my biggest disappointment of the day. UCLA at 68. You're joining the Big Ten. You're in trouble.
I was shocked when I saw that. I didn't know. I knew it was like a struggling class for UCLA this season. I did not know it was that bad.
And I think they closed strong. I think they were like 75 or something like that before the day started.
No, a couple more disappointing ones to me off that. Michigan at 17, no 5-stars, only 27 or I guess only 27. That's a big class, but 15 4-stars. Very interesting. I think maybe some Harbaugh NFL rumblings may have cost him a little bit. That's just speculation. I have no information on that at all. But I think the louder and louder those get, kids and families hear that. Like as much as we're talking about the portal, it's a pain in the ass, dude. Like kids don't want to go through that. Like the majority of kids don't. Like a lot of them are leaving because the coach got fired, because it's a bad situation, because they're promised something and they feel like they didn't get it. The reason why these recruitments have lasted longer and it starts when they're in 8th grade sometimes is because they want to pick their one school and graduate from it and get a degree. And so when you hear that, oh, maybe Harbaugh, who you're building a relationship with, maybe actually go to the NFL, I think that negatively impacted him a little bit. And I'll throw another one here quick too. Washington, we loved Caleb DeBoer. 28th overall, 6 4-stars, 10 3-stars, only 16 recruits. That's a little eye-opening to me as they come over into the Big Ten and they're losing some guys to the NFL.
Yeah, and I think the same thing applies. I think Washington might become one of those teams. And that's the thing with all these transfer portal schools, right? As I'm saying, it's unsustainable and everything, but I don't mean that you can't become, the 2010 or 2000 to 2020 version LSU where you just pop up every 4 years and you're better than everybody. Like I think that's a reality that we're going to see. But I think worse than what Washington did was the Pac-2 was Washington State and Oregon State. Both of them way, 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 way down the board. Not able to get the best guys within their states for the most part. Like they both had hits, but for programs and schools in general that are kind of reeling right now by this realignment and they don't have a home, right? They're going to go play basketball in the West Coast Conference probably. I think I read that today. But
yeah, all sports except for football, I believe.
Right. And so those are recruiting classes that would align with a non-Power 5 school, especially off of the years that both of them had, right? This is top 25, top 30 teams in the country. Oregon State for a couple of years now has been building something pretty cool. And then it's just as a shame that, what you're going to send your kid to a school that doesn't really have Like, you don't know if you're gonna be able to watch your games on TV. That's just tough.
Yeah, definitely. Tyson, you know what else is a shame? I was going to give some overall thoughts on National Signing Day because I was scrolling through social media and I was looking at all this funny stuff like from that's happened in the past National Signing Days, and people cared and people were staying up all night because they were so nervous about it. I saw one. I got to share that. So remember when Landon Collins committed to
Yeah.
Alabama, and you probably remember this very well as an
Yep.
LSU fan, where Landon Collins puts on the Alabama hat, and sitting next to him is his mom, who is furious with the decision, thinks he should go to LSU. Like, we don't get that anymore. It's disappointing.
Wasn't there another part of the Landon Collins saga? Was his stepbrother or something, a defensive lineman that went to Florida, I think, or transferred out, whatever it was. She was back. I'm gonna have to Google it, but there's a second part of that whole thing. She pops up twice in National Signing Day history, which is pretty crazy. But dude, I used to like skip school to watch this. Like, Mom, you got to call me out. Like, this is a big deal. Leonard Fournette is going to announce today or whatever or you'd make it was a habit to watch the All-American games because it was like there's going to be 4 or 5 guys committing today. I want to see where these dudes are going to play and see what they're all about. But yeah, we got robbed of so many hilarious, like when these kids are picking hats and stuff, and they think they're doing the coolest thing in the world, and they just look like everybody else. It's the best.
Well, anything you want to end on here? Anything else before we get out of here?
I mean, go Grizz. That's about it. We're talking college football. So I'm just going to get it in every episode until January 7th. I'm going to tuck my tail after what South Dakota State's able to do.
Well, Tyson, we didn't do any gambling stuff today. We didn't talk about bowl stuff. Honestly, it's probably for the best here. But if we do get a little itch, where can they find those plays?
And we will. It'll be on the Chalkboard app. It's in the App Store, Google Play, wherever you download your apps. Group name is ISWIS, presents the Roundtable Bets. Just type that in. We'll let you write it. It's free. It's just a group of people betting on whatever you could imagine, giving angles for plays or fun touchdown scorer parlays. We're almost at the end of the NFL season, man. So it's we only got a couple more weeks left to make $100,000, people.
And in the meantime, like I said off the top, like, subscribe, and share the show. If you haven't already, if you're still watching on YouTube, smash that like button on the way out. Hit the subscribe button. We do a bunch more content like this. We're going to have a fun off season too. So don't worry. We got you covered with college stuff, NFL stuff. So stay tuned and stick around for that. If you're listening to podcast form, send us a 5-star, say whatever you want, but it really helps us out. We do appreciate it, whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, wherever else you get your podcasts. And follow us on social, X, Instagram, TikTok. It's all the same at ISWIS_pod. Now, Tyson and I will be back later this week breaking down NFL games, breaking down, giving you some picks in those. As like he said, we're coming up on the end of it, and we're not going to have any football to bet on, and we're going to be crying. So make sure to stick around for that one. That'll be later this week. Until then, guys, peace.